Hey guys, how's it going? This is me, the color of Boom. Hope you guys are all doing well. And we're back here for another vlog. And today we're going to be going to the National Museum of RAK. So again, close to home. I've been here a few times before. Quite a few times. In fact, recently I was part-time volunteer tour guide there. So I definitely know some stuff about it. But I think it's a really nice place, and it's a neat thing. Our city is so small, we don't really have very much historical stuff that was created for dedicated to historical stuff. So I thought it would be neat to shine a light on this museum because it's one of the more upkept things that we have here in RAK that talk about our history. So although I already know a lot about it, we're going to go back again there so I can show it off to you guys, and hope to see you there.
أقول ألحان تتمايل لها السمعين وترفرف لها الأغصان النرجس مع الياسمين وتسافر.
Historical part of the museum. Yes, you're gonna be like, but isn't a museum all supposed to be historical? Only it's cut up into there's 3 sections to this museum. And so we're in the second section right now because the first section was closed, or was occupied. I guess I should say it was full of people. So we're in the just historical section, the archaeological section. So it's like all the pottery and spearheads and arrowheads and the typical stuff that they found, and like coins and all that sort of stuff, which you'll probably see in the video later on when we get down there. But the first section is the old age, which there's basically nothing of. So this little small room with some stones that they think are supposed to be arrowheads and some other pieces of pottery. This is the beginning of the more interesting sections. Wow, thanks Light for just going away. This is the Bronze Age section, and I'm just taking a video here to show you my favorite part of the Bronze Age, and of course I know all about this. Goodness gracious, lighting, please. I know about this because I used to do tours here, as I mentioned before at the beginning of the video. But these are dates that they found in one of the archaeological sites that they did. And this is my favorite part of the whole museum, actually, just because I think it's kind of cool. As you can see, 4,000-year-old dates. And they're itty bitty bitty bitty. And I'll put my fingers on the screen just to give you... Hold on. Let me get them on there just to give you a bit of an idea how small they are. And that's not even... Okay, that doesn't even work because my finger's not right next to them. But they are teeny tiny, like smaller than a penny. Incy-wincy little things. But in any case, that's my favorite part of the museum. And I'll mention some other interesting things that I learned while I was doing tours here as we go along. On loan, my butt. That object, quote unquote, has been gone for years, for months at least, on loan, air quotes. And it was ours, we found it here. And then they took it because it's the only valuable thing that they were able to find here. And now we just have a picture of it. Remember last post, we went to the Schimmel archaeological site. This is the room with all that stuff from there. See, they got a lot of pottery and some beads and spearheads and rings, and they got see the big rectangular / square piece of metal that you see there in the middle. That's apparently a razor, which that we paint. It's just a piece of rock, a piece of metal that they sharpen the edge of it, and then they just shave with that. That sounds pretty painful to me, but I guess back in those days that's like the best technology. This is their other showcase from there. So you can imagine this pretty much, it's so old, this is pretty much all they could find. They didn't really find any, they just found a few weaponry stuff, and that's only for hunting. So it was like a very old, remember I said it was the first ever, it's the oldest Islamic find that they have here in RAK. But yeah, it's cool. We've reached another room, the Partho-Sasanian period of Ras Al Khaimah. Now they say that, and it sounds kind of complicated, but what we were told when we were being introduced to the museum for our tour guide, they just said this is the start of the Islamic period. So everything in this room is like Islam just came to RAK, and so they got connected to the Muslim Empire, which was a big thing for us because then we became part of the whole trade group and everything. And we are, and you'll see that in the farming and ecological part of the museum. But we were big on pearls for a while until they started making fake pearls. But in any case, so this whole section is the beginning of Islam. So we start to get some more trade-related stuff, more travel and more outgoing stuff. So like up there we have a pot for water that somebody would have traveling, and there that's a stamp. It's supposed to be a stamp, and you can see that's what the stamp looks like, made bigger. It's a little tiny stamp. And these are all imported goods, some of the first imported stuff, some glass, some pottery from China and India and stuff like that. And these are coins that were made by the Muslim Empire. So this just tells you, because you can date this to the same time as this pottery, and then since we know that RAK didn't make its own coins, this is from the Muslim Empire, the logical conclusion is that, Islam has hit RAK at this point. And so then they got their own currency, yay. And then we really started taking off, and you'll see more of that in the next sections. Now we're in the last part, the last two rooms of the museum, which is when they were, when RAK was under control of other nations. So this room that I'm in right now is the Portuguese, and that one's just kind of an accumulation of what we have from other countries that doesn't date back to the other showcases. So the Portuguese obviously brought a lot more trade because we're on the edge there, and we were starting to get really into pearls, as I mentioned before. The Portuguese decided that RAK would be a good place to take, so it's like the tip of the Gulf, basically the UAE in general, because we're that little tip. So, but my favorite part of this must be like my second or third favorite part of the museum, just because it's a funny story, is this plate here that was actually imported to us from China. And it's funny because you may notice that the piece there on the right is not the same color. And that is because when we found it, when the archaeologists found it, it was all shattered, as you can clearly tell, and they had to put it back together. But when they put it back together, they realized they were missing this piece. And so a really talented guy, as you can clearly tell, made a replacement for it. And it's exactly lined up and everything, following the design that's already there all around the edges. So he was able to guess what would probably be there, and he made a replica. And then a few months later, right after we figured out that it was missing, they posted in the newspaper that we're missing this piece if anybody happens to find it, because we thought somebody stole it, right? Because we thought it was part of all of our finds. But then somebody saw the thing, a British guy saw our notice in the letter and said, "Oh, I was walking through the site on one of its public days, and I saw this piece of pottery and I just picked it up." And amazingly, it just so happened it was the right one. And when you see them together, that guy who did the copying job did an amazing job. But in any case, I just think it's funny that, we were basically giving up hope and we made a replica and everything. And I was like, oh, hey, it's there. So then they just decided to put this piece in next to it, just so people will know, it's a neat little story. But anyways, we'll be moving on to the next section now. Okay, so we made it to the anthropology or anthropology section. So this is basically all about what we did to better ourselves with trade and you guys should know what that word means. I don't. But basically, the first room is just I'm completely messed up here. The first room is just talking about the houses and stuff that are here. So these are supposed to be summer houses on this side, and on this side are winter houses. Just some pictures of the stuff, and some like maps here and there of where most of these settlements were found and things like that. Not super interesting to me, but if you find that interesting, good for you. And the second room here is our pearling history, which is huge because we were on top of our game with all the pearling. So this is like some pearling stuff, the basket and the weights that they'd use to go down and the utensils that they'd use to pull out the pearls or whatever. And here's a pearl diver's suit and some stuff that a pearling merchant would use. Cool things like that. But and even these boxes are pearl merchants' record boxes, and they still have records from the people who we got them from. They still have their pearling records, but we're not allowed to see them. Sometimes they pull them out to look at them, and if they find something that they want to try and correlate, sometimes they'll pull them out then, but no one else is allowed to touch them. Which is kind of cool that they're just there and there's some super probably interesting stuff in there. But in any case, the rest of this whole section, as you can see, is farming's on the right and fishing is on the left. But really the big thing is the pearling stuff here. And since we're mostly done looking at all the don't bump your head exhibition parts, except we still haven't looked at the first section, which is still super crowded for some reason, and I'm sweating like something that sweats. But in any case, this is the oldest part of the museum. So before, the museum used to be a fort, and I'll talk about it a bit more, some more informational stuff later when I'm doing my return video. But this museum actually used to be a fort before it was a museum. And when they made it into a museum, they refurbished the whole thing and they had to rebuild all of it. This is there's a bird up there. This is one of the towers of the fort that they did not have to replace. So this is the oldest part of the museum. It's not been changed at all. And for the sake of the video, or maybe to get some cool air, I'm gonna try and climb to the top, which I've done before. So this is nothing new. But there's a bird stuck in here, and I hope it doesn't attack me. Bird lover, don't attack me. I bring peace. It's a dove, so that should mean he's peaceful, right? See, right here it gets super steep, and not only are these stairs steep, but the entrance is like incy. So dropping the camera and or bumping my head is a very good possibility. So, ouch. Hey, bump my head. What do you know? But we made it. The top of the oldest part of this building. Please don't poop on me. Okay. Here we are. So this tower is in its original form. They had to put some plastering on it to make sure that it held together. But other than that, it's exactly as it would have been when the fort was first built. I'm out of breath really easily. And so you can see there's this higher up patio part where they put a sadly fake cannon. You kind of might hope that it's a real cannon, but it's fake, to simulate how it would look. And there's some nice people who have written stuff around here, their names, so you know they were here. And here's the view. This is downtown RAK, or at least the edges of downtown RAK. So as you can tell, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but I can see it from here, way beyond that mosque there. In the distance, you can kind of see the mountains emerging there. So that's where most of our defensive stuff happened, because that's like the safe, that's the place where you see most attackers coming in from. So most of the stuff that you see around, most of the forts and stuff that are still around are up there in the mountains. And this is one of the only original, or what used to be a fort, that is in the city, because this is where people actually lived, One of the rulers of the emirate early on, one of the rulers of RAK early on lived here. So that's why this place has been kept pretty intact, and even the wife of the current ruler, or the current ruler of RAK, comes to visit every now and then to visit the museum, and she's been here so many times. At this point, I guess she just comes to talk to the people who are in charge of the museum. But in any case, because you know no, it's the mother of the current ruler. So her husband used to live here, right? Like towards the end of his life, he grew up here. He was born here and grew up here, and then he moved to a palace when we became part of the Emirates and everything. But then towards the end of his life, he started to, when he was really going downhill, he decided that he wanted to come back here, you know, for his final days or whatever. So she must have some sentimental value here. So she comes every now and then, and the whole museum shuts down so she can come in and everything. And of course, that also means that it's kept pretty well taken care of because, you know, she cares about it. And over here, which is the next place that we should be going to, you can see is a wind tower. And it is an original wind tower. It's a, you know, a proper wind tower that actually works as a wind tower. Which maybe I'll probably explain when we get over there what exactly a wind tower is. But it's basically just supposed to keep the building cool by letting air circulate through it. And it's really clever, and we're the only people over here in the Middle East who invented it, right? So, really awesome. But the special thing about it, this one right here, is that there's only 2 of them in the UAE. And I think maybe in all of the UAE, I don't remember exactly, all of Arabia, I don't remember exactly. But at least in the UAE, there's only 2, I'm sure of that. One of them, I believe, is in Al Ain or some other emirate. Or maybe it's here. I think it's in another emirate. But this one is one of the actual proper, it's still working. If you go into that room, it's cool. There's no AC or anything. Just the tower provides the air. And it's one of the only 2 working ones here in the UAE, so it's a pretty big thing for our museum that we have that. But in any case, we're going to be going over there hopefully soon, and see you there. Hey, so this is, goodness gracious, I'm out of breath. This is the wind tower, what I built up for so much. So, doesn't look like much in here. And by the way, let me just mention that chef who I mentioned before, and I forget his name, but again, I will touch back on it when I do my return video. But this was his bedroom when he was a kid. This is where he lived. And in fact, they kept some of the stuff you can see here in the corner. This design would have been all over the walls here. See that design? Yeah. All over the walls here, because it was his bedroom, right? So it was all colorful and all that. He was a kid. But in any case, I'll talk about more of that later, and so they kept that around. I'll talk about it later. But this is the main attraction. This is the wind tower. So you see there's like a series of grates and stuff that allow winds to funnel through. And on a nice windy day, and even sometimes if it's not all that windy, it just needs to be a little bit windy. But the wind is brought down in here. See, like I can feel a slight breeze right now. Nothing like air, but it's a breeze. And it's crazy. It's like even the smallest amount of wind and you feel it. So then you can imagine if all of the walls are made out of wet clay that's cool and all that. And sometimes even if it's underground a bit, or if it's lower to the ground a bit, and then this thing is coming through and everything is sealed, except there's some, see, there's these things here. All along the edges you may see there's a little bit extra light in all of these ducts, all these indents in the wall. There's a little bit more light than in other places. That's because it's an opening. It's just open there. So then all the air everywhere, there's just circulation for air all over the place. So you can imagine without any AC, this is like the coolest room. Cool as in, well, maybe cool as in yo cool, but I'm meaning it cool as in cold in the whole house, in the whole building. This is probably the coldest room here, except for the rooms that have AC, air conditioning. But in any case, that's probably going to do it for the museum. We're going to go back down and check the first section and see if it's still so crowded. If it is, we'll probably just move on. It's mostly just shells, and I can tell you about it rather than showing you. It's not anything amazing to see, but we'll see. Maybe it'll still be part of the video. And either way, we'll either see you there or see you at home. Hey guys, we just got back from. He's totally relaxing. We just got back from the National Museum of RAK, or RAK, which is what I'm gonna call it. And my cat just got on my lap as we started recording, so we decided to just go with it. So I just wanted to give a little bit of history about the actual thing. The video in of itself, I talk so much in the actual video that it's good enough. I'm just going to tell you a bit about the museum and that's it. The actual building started out as a fort for defense purposes. Okay, hold on. Okay, the building was built originally as a fort, and after a while it was converted into a prison after they didn't need to defend the area anymore. And then it was converted into a living area where the late ruler of RAK, Sheikh Saqar, used to live, and where he was born, and he grew up there and everything. And he's one of the oldest rulers in the world. And while he died at 90 something, age 90 something, I believe. And when he was alive, he was right up there with like Queen Elizabeth in the longest living rulers. It was something like 50 years that he was there. And so after he grew up and he became a big sheikh and everything, and RAK joined the United Arab Emirates, he moved into a proper palace or ruler's area, and it turned into a museum. And it took a while. It took them almost 2 years, I believe, to open up the museum, but finally it opened. And then a little while later, he when he became really old in his last year or two of his life, and he was really clearly going downhill, he decided that he wanted to live his last few years there where he grew up. And so then the top floor of the museum, or of the fort, was converted into a living space for him, and it's still shut off. There's a little corner where there's offices, and so the people in charge of the museum work there, but other than that, everything on the top level is shut off, and the tower's also open. But other than that, everything else in the top level is closed off, because that's where he was living, and they've just decided to leave it the way it was. I don't know if they'll ever open it up again, but hopefully they will, and then we can get to see it. But in any case, that's all I really have to say here. You guys saw all you really needed to see in the video, hopefully. If you have any questions, just say so in the comments and I'll answer them. Although, it's rich in history, so it's really the best thing to do is for you to just come over yourselves. But in any case, make sure to go check out the blog. It's got some stuff that's not in the vlog. I try to make it split up and not just everything that's in the vlog is in the blog. So there's some other different stuff in the blog, so you should go check it out, link in the description, and see you guys next time.